All right, ladies and gentlemen, bringing you a bit of a different video today. Sit back, relax, and enjoy. This is more of an audio podcast type of video that'll run a little longer than my normal videos, and you can actually hear the crickets in the background. I'm recording late at night, so I'm very chilled out, but I'm also excited to talk about Gotham Knights because I ran a poll today, and I was really curious to see the answer to the poll. So I'm going to be reading through some of these questions and also giving my general thoughts on the direction that W. Montreal has taken Gotham Knights. You know, thus far, I've done a lot of videos on Gotham Knights, obviously, but the vast majority of them have been covering the news and information because one thing that is really encouraging that this game might come out early to middle of next year is the fact that they dropped the game and they did not just disappear like Naughty Dog did for The Last of Us or like Rockstar does when they announce a Grand Theft Auto game, where they announce and then it's radio silence for like a year afterwards in some cases. In this case, they dropped and then they interviewed with every major publication and trade in the video game industry within the week. And there was a huge info dump on, there's areas of the map and there are 5 different areas and each area is owned by a different Wayne family. For instance, like one of the islands is owned by the Cobblepots, another island might be owned by the Elliots, Thomas Elliot, etc. And that's, I don't think they're islands, they're just 5 zones in particular, and thank God for that because the Arkham Knight Island system didn't really work in my personal opinion. But anyway, I saw all of that to say that the vast majority of my videos thus far have been on news and information and delving into the nitty-gritty details about heroes I would like to see in the game, but I haven't really had a full chance since the video with Degenerate J, which was also a dual commentary and not just my thoughts, to really expand upon my thoughts on Gotham Knights in a podcast format, and that's exactly what I'll be doing in this video. So as I mentioned, I ran a poll on Twitter, and the essence of the poll is, are you happy with the direction that W. Montreal has taken Gotham Knights in context of the Batman Arkham games? Of course, many people were speculating that this next game from them was going to not only be a Batman game, it was going to be an Arkham-style Batman game. And I actually have a thought on that in particular, and one thing that I thought they could have done with this game, and one of the biggest negative aspects of it that I've seen in terms of negative reactions, is the fact that it abandons the free flow combat. Now, it's a double-edged sword, because if you recall, when they made Batman Arkham Origins, one of the biggest complaints of the game is that, it plays and looks too much like Batman Arkham City. I remember people said that. And when you play the game, it does play quite a bit like Arkham City in terms of the gameplay. The aesthetic of the game is actually a slight downgrade from Arkham City in terms of the colors and how the colors work. It's a little too gray, but then again, it takes place during the winter and snow, so I guess it kind of makes sense. Maybe that was a intentional stylistic design, at which point I will ride that complaint off. But nonetheless, this really is W. Montreal's first game building their own system from the ground up, and I think it's an important step for them to do that as a studio and get that creative groundwork under their feet as a first sort of instance of building their own combat system. But at the same point, I do see and understand the comparisons to Marvel's Avengers, which has been met with mixed reviews. Fans have not had the fervor for it. I mean, I'll be completely honest, there's a reason that this week I'm talking about Gotham Knights instead of making Marvel's Avengers videos, and that's because even though it does have a certain audience, and I think that I do want to make videos for it going forward, it is clearly not of the same quality of a game like the Batman Arkham series, and hopefully Gotham Knights. And one concern that people are noting is that the gameplay does seem to borrow some similarities from that. However, I think that the Gotham Knights gameplay will be far superior to Marvel's Avengers, and I think that W. Montreal has a fantastic amount of potential as a studio, as it's being led by many, many high-end game designers and developers that have worked on legacied franchises and projects who are true talents in their field. Not that Square Enix does not offer that, but I also think that W. Montreal and Warner Brothers at large have had an increased investment in assuring that there is quality control in their games. They do not publish games that they feel do not work. That's why this studio in particular has already dealt with 3 cancellations, and that is just that they're not under the EA model. They're not under the model of many other studios, which is we need a new game every single year, whether you like it or not. Doesn't matter if the game is broken, we push it out anyway. It is self-evident that WB is doing the complete opposite approach, where they are taking quality assurance to the max. Now, they might be abandoning it at this point because it's been a long time of doing that and not making any money, but I think as a general rule, they are much more concerned about QA than somebody like an EA or something like that. Moreover, this game is not built as a games as a service, and that's really what I was trying to get at in the poll is, like, are you pleased with this new direction, or did you want to see a continuation of Batman Arkham? My point mainly being that I kind of feel as though they could have done a mix where they could have focused on the Gotham Knights, Batgirl, Nightwing, Red Hood, Tim Drake, Robin, etc., and they could focus on these characters. I'm totally fine with that. I'm totally fine with excluding Batman, because in my poll, that's something that I have noticed is that people are not necessarily as upset about not including Batman as you would think. Yes, there is a very vocal minority of people that will let you know loud and proud on Twitter that they are not going to buy the game because Batman is in it and they're boycotting. And by the way, I am not dissuading you. I'm not making fun of those people in any way. You're never going to hear me come on and do what members in other communities do, not the Batman community or like DC or our video game community, but I see it like in Star Wars and other things like that, where like I have a holier than thou position than you, and I think your position is really stupid. Like the fact that you're just a small-brained idiot and you just want another Batman Arkham game. Well, I am so smart, and I know that we need this new type of game, and Batman Arkham needs to be left behind, and anyone who is trying to hold on to the past is an idiot. Like I've seen comments actually like that, not from any YouTubers, but from just people on Twitter, and I find those arguments to be incredibly stupid because the Batman Arkham franchise is one of the best franchises ever made. And to not want to continue that, it is kind of lunacy, because a series that is this good is going to be eventually milked to death, typically. You look at Assassin's Creed, or you look at other franchises like that. Even you could argue Ratchet and Clank. Now, I think Ratchet and Clank is a pretty good quality, but then again, go down the line to Call of Duty, Battlefront. Like these are franchises. Honestly, I would not be surprised if Batman Arkham is rebooted, much like Battlefront was. Battlefront came out in 2005. Battlefront 2 came out, which is an iconic first-person shooter game. It is incredible. Well, actually, it's third-person shooter technically, but I think you can switch. Anyway, whatever. I love playing that game as a kid, and the point being is that Batman Arkham could be on that level where they put it away for 8 to 10 years and then bring it right back out. And, we're rebooting this thing. And then the question is it going to be as bad as Battlefront 1, the most recent version from 2015 was? Or is it going to be as iconic as Battlefront 2 in 2015? And, Battlefront 2 was also kind of a dud. And that's really the cross in the roads, is that a lot of times when these game franchises are rebooted, they are not rebooted in the proper way. But with that being said, the one surefire way to ruin Arkham, beyond the extent to which the canon has already been degraded, it's not exactly what it used to be. Back in Arkham City, everything was canon. Then they added the Suicide Squad movie, which was like, okay, there were a couple inconsistencies with that, but on the whole, it made a lot of sense. And then going on forward from that, Batman Arkham Origins and the Arkham Knight prequel comics were an absolute disaster for the canon. And now we're throwing on top of that Rocksteady Suicide Squad game, which, okay, Rocksteady, they are the ones that started their own canon. It's like the Rocksteady extended video game universe is what Rocksteady is building. So I take their word for it and what the canon entails more than, let's say, some random comic book writer who was hired on to write. They didn't even want to write Batman Arkham. They just wanted to take Tom King's role writing the real Batman and didn't get it. So then they were put on a Batman Arkham comic, right? And which is kind of like this Elseworld comic that didn't sell very well. And that's totally practical and reasonable. And those people are not really going to be caring about what they're writing. And they're certainly not reading into the canon and trying to delve into the lore and understand everything perfectly, because they don't really care that much. So that's the question. Is that what happened there? And if so, I think that Rocksteady deserves the right to say, okay, and I know in this comic this happened to King Shark, but we want him in this game anyway. We're retconning that comic, whatever. And we're retconning the movie. If you know, the Suicide Squad movie, the animated movie, was, basically it's supposed to be connected to Arkham. The movie was called Assault on Arkham, and evidently they're probably going to retcon that because it totally contradicts what's going to be happening in this game and the Suicide Squad that entails. So there's going to need to be a retcon that comes out probably 6 months before the game comes out. They're going to announce, just like when Disney acquired Star Wars, they basically came out and said, okay, all those Star Wars novels that you guys fangirled over for years and years, yeah, they're all irrelevant. Throw them in the trash, burn them, like in Fahrenheit 451, and, they're useless, right? So, but thanks for spending all the money. Thanks for all the fan fiction, but it's just fan fiction at that point. So that's probably what they're going to do at some point to the Assault on Arkham movie, which is kind of a shame because you build your idea of like what the Suicide Squad looks like between the Arkham Origins teaser, and that's another thing. Arkham Origins basically set up the continuation for W Montreal to do that second Suicide Squad game, and they tried to do it, and then it got canceled, okay? But they did try to really do that, and they tried to build off of Arkham Origins. That was W Montreal's trajectory, was to set up the Suicide Squad in Arkham Origins and then make a Suicide Squad game for 2016, 2017, right after Batman Arkham Knight came out in 2015. And it ultimately never happened because they were just having difficulties making the game work and flow adequately. So that game was ultimately canceled. So back to my thoughts on Gotham Knights. The real thing that I think is that it would have made sense for them to do this exact game with the exact plot, with the exact same co-op, with the Arkham free flow combat. Now, again, I totally understand them wanting to differentiate this game from Batman Arkham, but part of me kind of wishes that they had the Batgirl from Arkham, Robin from Arkham, Nightwing from Arkham, and basically setting up a game that takes place after the events of Arkham Knight. The other thing that I do think is a little weird about this game, just being totally honest, and it's not an insult to it per se, I just think it's an odd creative choice, is that the way that the trailer for this game starts is with the Knightfall Protocol. In other words, this game picks up directly after the Knightfall Protocol. It literally is a direct sequel to Arkham Knight, albeit they're in different universes, but the same exact thing happens. Like Batman basically allegedly commits suicide, but probably doesn't, and he's presumed to be dead, and then the Batfamily is forced to take over after Gotham. And like, what happens? Does Commissioner Gordon become mayor? And Batman Arkham Knight, he does. And then this could be like, okay, we're following the Batman Arkham Commissioner Gordon, we're following this and that. So the point being is that, yes, leave Arkham behind. Did I want Batman Arkham Origins 2 from W Montreal? No, I did not. Did I want another Batman game from W Montreal? Not necessarily, because the thing is, as many of you know, Batgirl is my favorite comic book character. In addition, Nightwing is in my top 5, and, Batman is number 2 in that list. But with all that being said, I really do want to see more emphasis on those characters of, Red Hood, Nightwing, Batgirl, Robin. It's very interesting to me, and it's something that we get shortchanged because Batman overshadows everybody that he associates. If Batman is in the game, even in any large capacity at all, if he is in this game, which I think that he's not, W Montreal has said repeatedly and insisted that he is not, so I'm just going to take their word for it rather than getting my hopes up and saying, oh, maybe Batman will be in the game. Instead, I'm just going to believe them and have low expectations and say, okay, they're right. They're telling the truth. He's not in it. And then if he is, I'll be pleasantly surprised. If not, I won't be disappointed. I think to go into the game saying, I know they're lying, I know Batman's going to be in there, you are setting yourself up for disappointment, and I do not advise anyone to do that. And with that being said, I'm going into the game fully acknowledging that he is dead. With that being said, that's totally fine. Kill Batman. I think that is a great opportunity for us to get more character development with the Bat family, because in the Batman Arkham games, he consistently overshadows the Bat family. We don't even see what Barbara Gordon looks like in real life until Batman Arkham Knight. Until then, we're just talking to her over the radio. There's no character development. It's purely plot driven, and we don't actually get any face time with the character to develop our relationship. In other words, the only way that you will play Arkham Knight and have any affinity or care for Barbara Gordon or Dick Grayson is if you've read the comics, you've seen the animated series, you already know who the characters are, and you already know the backstories. But we don't actually see the backstories in the Batman Arkham games. And this game could have been an opportunity to basically replicate the amazing combat that they had in Batman Arkham, where the free flow combat is the best in the world. The other problem is that in the DLC that W Montreal developed in 2015, the Batgirl DLC pack, it was 45 minutes in length, and it was the plot was not very well developed. You save 3 hostages. The cool thing about it, I guess, is that you get to pick the order that you save the hostages, but that's not particularly enticing in any way. And the problem with that game, with that DLC in particular, is that there is no value add to playing Batgirl. In fact, you get fewer gadgets than Batman does, so it's kind of like, what's the point in even playing the DLC? Because what's the point in playing as Batgirl? She is Batman light. And what they could have done is developed character moves around all 4 of those characters within the Batman Arkham engine. So making totally different characters. So it addresses the concern of Arkham Origins. It's like, hey, you just copied the gameplay exactly from Arkham City, added shock gloves to it, and that's all you did, which is pretty accurate for what they did in Arkham Origins. I mean, let's be real. That's pretty much what happened. And they could have addressed that concern by basically making Batgirl play completely different from Batman in every way. From his animations, differentiating the animations more, but that's just the start of it. What unique gadgets does Batgirl have that Batman and the other Bat family members do have? Red Hood is a totally different character. He is a ranged combat character, which is never the case in Batman Arkham. In Batman Arkham, every character you play with is a close quarters character, but Red Hood is a ranged attacker, which is incredibly interesting to play as that in the free flow combat system, because of course he can still engage in combat, he can still punch people, but it would play completely differently than Red Hood played necessarily in the Batman. But so again, like, imagine the Red Hood DLC, but that is extrapolated, and instead of just vaguely shooting in the direction of other people and then the animation striking him, it's actually like a real thing where you can aim your gun, and it's like you're an Overwatch character in terms of the amount of development and abilities and gadgets that you can utilize, but it is just done much better than the Batman Arkham games, which again, why would you build complex character animations, moves, gadgets, and other things like that to make Red Hood as fun and as playable as Batman when he has a 10-minute DLC? that would just be totally superfluous to spend months and months designing the UI and the interface and the gadgets and all of that for a character that you can only play as in a 10-minute DLC. It's the same thing with Batgirl. So I totally understand why they shortchange those characters in terms of developing their play style. But that's what I would have loved to see Gotham Knights is it takes place directly after the events of Arkham Knight. And then, okay, what would the plot of that game look like? It would basically entail the aftermath of the Nightfall Protocol, which is where Bruce Wayne has disappeared, but there is some mention of the Nightfall Bat from the end of Batman Arkham Knight. And they know that Bruce is alive at that point, but they don't know where he is. And they eventually find out that Alfred is alive. And, it's somehow, some way they're trying to track down the Nightfall Bat, but he's been corrupted by the Court of Owls. Bruce Wayne has been kidnapped by the Court of Owls, something like that. Or the Nightfall Bat is somehow utilized by Talon, and you're basically trying to get Bruce Wayne back somehow, some way. I think that there are so many interesting possibilities. That is an idea that I thought of in just 10 seconds ago. It's not like I fleshed that out fully. I would amend that idea and try to refine it a little bit, and, it could come off as cheesy if not executed well. But the thing that I just don't really understand, if I'm being completely 100% honest, I don't understand why you would start Gotham Knights with the Nightfall Protocol, because even like people that I meet, like friends from the area, we'll just be hanging out and they know that I'm a YouTuber for this stuff, right? So they'll come up to me and be like, yo, what's going on with Gotham Knights? Like, what world is it in? Is it like it takes place after Arkham, but where is like Batman? Are we going to see where Batman is? I'm like, no, it's not connected to Arkham. They're like, what? But like the manor blows up and it's like just like the end of Arkham Knight. Isn't that how Arkham Knight ended? Where it ended like the Dark Knight Rises, and it's like the same thing where the explosion and Batman evidently dies, but we know he's not really dead. And that's the thing about it. They're wondering why so many people are theorizing that Batman is alive in this universe. Well, it's because you made the intro of your game identical to the Nightfall Protocol at the end of Batman Arkham Knight. And of course, enraptured in that is that we know that Batman is not really dead at the end of Arkham Knight. That is their problem. That's why nobody believes them. And I just thought about it right now. That is the reason that nobody believes them, because this game takes place where the Arkham Knight game leaves off with the Nightfall Protocol, and we know that Batman does not die in the Nightfall Protocol because we even see that he's alive at the end credit scene. We know that Batman is not dead. So, and of course in the Dark Knight Rises, we know Batman did not die. So every time this whole Wayne Manor explodes, Batman is dead. Oh, here's a message from Batman that he's dead. Every single time that has been used in the comics, it has been used as a bait. Every single time it's been used in the movies, it's been a bait. Every single time Batman is alive. And this was not the way to intro your game if you really wanted to convince us that Batman is dead. What instead you do is you show his head getting cut off by Ra's al Ghul and then the Wayne Manor exploding. And this is legitimate advice to W. Montreal. I know that this sounds totally stupid, but I am telling you right now, 1,000,000% I promise you, I know this community. I'm not condoning this. I do not want to contribute to conspiracy theories that Batman is alive, because I believe you when you tell the community, do not get excited for Batman. Do not expect him because he's not in the game. When they are saying that, they really are trying to level our expectations. But I'm telling you right now, the community is not going to buy that unless you literally show us. And as I mentioned, if you start this game with the Nightfall Protocol, people are always going to be suspicious. They're going to be like, this is how Arkham Knight ended. This is how the Dark Knight Rises ended. Batman never dies. That's what I've seen is every time I've tried to say like, well, they're really insisting that he's dead. People are like, Batman never dies. Haven't you seen the Dark Knight Rises? Haven't you seen Arkham Knight? Haven't you seen like every Batman comic ever written? He never dies. If you show him getting decapitated and then the Wayne Manor explodes, we're like, okay, he's dead. And then they're not going to be like, because right now the main conspiracy theory I'm seeing is that Batman is involved in the Court of Owls. But like, imagine how big of a letdown this game is if you're expecting for like Talon to take off the mask and it's Bruce Wayne, and that plot payoff just never comes. It's going to be disappointment that's even worse than Arkham Knight. So I do think that W. Montreal, again, I'm being totally, I feel like there is some way that they can really portray to us and prove even more. It might seem superfluous and it might ruin the anticipation. Maybe they're actually trying to have this ambiguity of people like me that are saying, I really do believe them that they're dead, but then all the comments are like, no, he's alive. And maybe that's like part of the hype marketing machine. That's not necessarily intentional, but just has happened as a byproduct. If that is the case, I totally understand, and they are not obliged to clarify anything, but I do feel that it's important to just give my perspective, and knowing this community, being a part of it for 5 years. Whether I agree or not, I do not foresee the Arkham community accepting that Batman is dead in this game until they play the entire thing, play the entire ending, the end credit scene, 240% it again. Find every single Riddler trophy or whatever they call him in this game. Until that point, no one is going to buy that Batman is truly dead. And until we see the end of the Court of Owls, we'll have to wait and see, especially because the Court of Owls has already been confirmed to have connections to historic families in Gotham, like the Elliots, like the Cobblepots, and like the Waynes. In recent renditions of the Waynes in Batman the Telltale series, for instance, they have been portrayed as villains, and that's something that I think would certainly align with the social climate that we are in. I would say is not particularly favorable to very wealthy people, and I don't mean that as any political statement, but think about like Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg and other people like that, Amazon's Jeff Bezos. These are not people that are exactly beloved by the average person for whatever reason. And again, that's not a political statement. It's just an observation. So the question really remains, if Bruce Wayne existed in the real world today, would he actually be revered as a hero? And would people actually look at this guy who's a multi-billionaire in a city with a bunch of crime and homelessness and all of that? Would they look at this person as a hero? Would they look as Batman, who is a crime-fighting vigilante who goes around and beats the fuck out of criminals without doing any like actual due process of any kind? He just goes, busts your teeth in, and then leaves, to random like drug addicts and homeless people and shit like that, and other people committing crimes. Typically, he doesn't beat up homeless people. I can't even think of any recent story in which he's done that. But certainly people that have mental disabilities and psychotic breakdowns and shit like that, and other mental illnesses such as the Joker, cough cough. So I mean, given that, would Batman even be a hero in today's world? Now we've kind of gotten off track from the idea of Gotham Knights, but I do think that relates to how the Wayne family, Thomas Wayne, and all of these characters will be related to the Court of Owls type of story. So I do think that the Waynes, Bruce Wayne and Thomas Wayne, will be involved in flashbacks in the game, but maybe just establishing that there is some dirty money in Gotham that has actually been pushed into the system by the Waynes, and maybe they're not as good of people as everyone thought at first. So let's get into the results of the poll. And again, as I just revealed, my basically vote was in favor of the minority. I disagreed with most of my audience. I tweeted, "Are you happy with the direction W Montreal has taken Gotham Knights?" 62.9% of respondents said yes, leave Arkham behind, and 37% of respondents said no, where's Batman? Now, okay, I actually am not really falling into either camp, which is really embarrassing because I made my own poll. But I'm not upset that Batman is not in the game, but I also think that this should have been a Gotham Knights game set in the Batman Arkham Universe. So they should not have left Arkham behind, but it is okay to leave Batman behind. So again, I actually fall in between both of these answer choices. So I suck at making polls, whatever. But imagine the same pitch for this game is Batgirl, Nightwing, Red Hood, Robin. They are trying to find themselves as heroes and the sole protectors of Gotham after the death of Batman. Imagine the same exact plot. And again, the Court of Owls show up, who we did not get in the Batman Arkham games. The Court of Owls show up, and they are basically, somehow in control of Batman, in control of the Scarecrow Bat that we see at the end of the Knightfall Protocol. We know Bruce Wayne is somewhere there, and Batman is alive somehow, and that Alfred is also alive, and you're uncovering these clues and secrets, and ultimately the main mystery of the game that you're unraveling is, where is Batman? Where is Bruce Wayne? Is he a Talon? Is he hidden in those, where is he? And ultimately the whole game taking place is finding down and tracking down the whereabouts of Bruce Wayne and Batman, until at the end you rescue him somehow and he becomes Batman once again. He dies at the end of the game. I mean, there's so many things they could do with it, and I'm totally fine with killing Batman. I'm totally fine with making this game purely focus on these four characters. But why abandon the free flow combat, and why abandon the Batman Arkham universe? Well, there's a number of different reasons. This gives them more opportunity and more potential to develop their own universe, to do their own take on Mr. Freeze and the Joker and these other characters, rather than being tethered to Rocksteady. But I also would have really enjoyed to see the broader DC video games universe, and I kind of see the video game canon following the line of the movie canon, which I'm not particularly a fan of. And what do I mean by that? Well, WB's current strategy with the movies is to make all of their movies disconnected. So Joker is not canon to Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman 1984 is not even going to be connected, I don't think, to Justice League, although it will be kind of vaguely. But they're basically retconning the entire DC universe. Shazam has almost no mention to, the rest of the DCU besides at the very end with the Man of Steel teaser. So basically these movies are all Elseworld stories. The Batman from Matt Reeves is going to be totally disconnected, and that is the direction that they're basically taking the video games, except albeit at a sort of mixed approach, because all of Rocksteady's games are connected to one another. But then again, it's kind of the same with like Shazam 1 is canon to Shazam 2, and whatever games W Montreal makes are connected to one another. So we'll have to wait and see how that works. But part of me does kind of wish that we would have gotten this game as a sequel directly to Batman Arkham Knight. Other than that general critique of the direction of the game, mainly as it pertains to the gameplay, I mean, I'm excited by the possibility of this story being totally disconnected. I'm totally okay with accepting that. But abandoning the free flow combat was a very bold decision, and also showing the Mr. Freeze boss fight was a super bold decision, because you're comparing to what many people to consider to be one of the top 5 best boss fights of all time with the Mr. Freeze Batman Arkham City boss fight, and of course the Mr. Freeze boss fight in Arkham Knight, where you fight against a number of takes, and the Season of Infamy DLC is one of the worst boss fights ever made. So given that context, I do think that it was a very strong, probably too bold of a decision to show the Mr. Freeze boss fight in this game, because it doesn't seem to really compare in any real way to the Mr. Freeze boss fight, both in terms of like just they're completely different, and probably in terms of quality it doesn't really compare. But again, you're comparing a stealth boss fight to a general combat boss fight, but it just seems a little bit less sophisticated, and was again just not a good comparison. If they had a different villain to show, that might have been a better choice. That's also a minor nitpick. I mean, that's a marketing nitpick. Like, who cares? I'm sure that the boss fights in the game will be great, but that was one problem with Marvel's Avengers. If they are sampling the gameplay off of Marvel's Avengers, there are only 3 real boss fights in the game from what I've heard. Abomination and the Taskmaster boss fight. The Taskmaster boss fight was like, it's okay, like a 7 out of 10 with Black Widow. It's okay. A lot of QTEs at the beginning. And then the Abomination boss fight was pretty good. I'll give that an 8 out of 10. And then the third boss fight is the final boss fight, which I won't mention due to spoilers, but and I haven't even played that far yet into the game. So basically, those are the main 3 boss fights in the game. That's a little bit underwhelming. Arkham fans are really big into boss fights. It's something that's very important to the Arkham community. So we're going to have to wait and see if those will be included, which I'm sure they will be. And this is W Montreal's, again, first real outing, totally separate from the Batman Arkham Universe, which, again, is a huge, strong step for them, is that they're not borrowing from Arkham City. And if they had made exactly what I'm mentioning, which is, Batgirl with the same Arkham gameplay, then it could have been a very similar situation where it's just like, oh, another replica of Batman Arkham City, which was in Origins. We could have had the same critiques and then said like, oh, they should have done something totally different. I could totally imagine that happening and me saying that as well. So ultimately, I think we're a hard bunch to please, but as it pertains to the general direction of excluding Batman, putting more focus on the Bat family, I think that that's really what this poll is getting at, and that's what we are agreeing with, is that we are okay. Only 37% of respondents said, no, where is Batman? So even though there is that third of fans who are just like, I really wish that Batman is in this, and no matter what we say and do, they're going to wish for Batman. But there's a huge plethora of people who are really happy and surprised with this new direction and excited to play it when the game ultimately comes out. So I'm super excited to see that and see how all of this develops when it comes to this game. And I cannot wait to play it. It's really going to be such an exciting time for all of us to be getting this game in 2021 and then the Suicide Squad game in 2022. I think both games will be absolutely phenomenal. They've gone through cancellations because the quality wasn't up to snuff, and now they finally felt confident announcing this game. We had a ton of reveals and info drops already. That's a positive sign that the game could come out early to middle of next year, although I'm kind of expecting summer to November, somewhere in that range of 2021 for Gotham Knights, but I certainly hope not. We'll just have to wait and see, and maybe we can get a beta at some point. That would all be amazing. So I hope you are listening, Warner Brothers, and the people want a beta. Let us play this game. Even if it's a pre-alpha, give us that alpha code. Come on now. Come on. We want to play it. Okay, so thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. My name is Slickmoff. I will see you guys in the next video. Peace out. One last thing. Shout out to all of my elite members. Greg Pop, Chunky Donkey, Q Comics, Five Nights at Freddy's Fan, Waddle, Pipsqueak, Best Detective 94, Michael Knight, Chris Moore, Gotham Knights 42, and Adrian Foster. Thank you all so much for being elite members. For $10 a month, you get your name at the end of all of my videos, and for $5 a month, you get a bonus video every single Sunday that is only available to members. I think you guys will really enjoy those commentaries. Check the link in the description below, and also you get those badges, chat emojis, and all those other great benefits when you become a Slick Mafia member. Thank you so much for tuning in. See you in the next video. Peace out.